Hi, I'm Dawn with CND MMA, and I'm sitting here today with Jaye Byard. He's the Canadian heavyweight champion and the UBO Continental heavyweight champion. Jay, for those of us or my audience at home that may not know much about your story or who you are, do you want to give us a little introduction into your world and maybe how you got started in boxing?
Sure, yes. First of all, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure. Um, yeah, I started boxing. It's been about 34 years. I started boxing at 10 years old. And I started boxing because I got bullied in the neighborhood. And I had moved back to the north end of Halifax. And, that was kind of my outlet to be able to focus on something more constructive than getting in trouble after.
So that's a pretty, it's not the most abnormal story for someone that came into boxing and how they got into it. So it's it's good to hear that that's the thing that took you to where you wanted to be. Whether it was a tough path to take to get there, it got you where you wanted. Okay, so let's talk about how you built your way up from maybe starting in the gym to actually starting to compete.
Okay. Yeah, so when I was 10 years old and I started boxing at that time, you couldn't compete till 12. So I spent about 2 years training in the gym. And then I got my first bout, my first amateur bout. And I won that fight. Ended up fighting a guy in Cape Breton, different part of Nova Scotia. And he was also the second guy that I fought. I won that fight as well. And I had actually hairline fractured my thumb in the second fight. It got the win just the same. So the feeling to have it happen twice and make sure that I made it, nobody thought it was a fluke, right?
Right. And then let's talk about going from there and building from your amateur and trying to head towards pro and what that journey looked like as a young kid as well. What age were you when you were doing your amateur to pro bout?
Well, I actually had a 28-year amateur career
Right.
because of the start and also kind of the second half of my career before I turned pro. Um, but basically, I was fortunate. I was in the Citadel Boxing Club in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and at that time we had, I think, 8 Canadian champions. We had 5 Olympians in the gym at that time. In 1996, we had 3 guys alone to Atlanta on the Canadian team, North American Olympic team, and so those guys were really the ones that kind of helped set the bar for us. They set the expectations. When we got there after school, we knew that these guys were serious. They were focused on goals that are much bigger than just local and national stuff. And so they really kind of motivated us and inspired us to continue on, right? There was a blueprint.
There's a blue. And if you don't mind just touching, we don't have to go into a huge extension of it, but I think it's an important part of your journey. And, the fact that you were building your way up in such a beautiful style to have it interrupted. If you want to give the audience maybe a little history there, because I really do think it helps, especially growing kids that are trying to follow your same path, to hear your story because it's such an important one in how one little thing can just ruin everything. And that one decision, you know, can hurt so many people, not just your journey, but other people's journey as well. So I think if you want to just touch on what happened as you were building your career and to our audience about that.
Yeah. My story is not all that unique in that I came from less than fortunate circumstances. My life was pretty chaotic as a young man. I moved around a lot. I experienced a lot of negative things, unfortunate things that happened, and that kind of shaped my character, and it shapes how you respond to things and how you see things. And so, I found myself in a situation much younger than most people do for those types of unfortunate tragedies. But I was supporting myself as a young man, and we had some important decisions. And unfortunately, somebody lost their life in the process. And myself and another individual, we ended up having to serve for years for that, pay our debt to society, and ultimately rehabilitate ourselves and try and be able to bring successfully. It's a difficult process. We're extremely painful. A lot of people were impacted by our actions, and that's stuff that we live with every day. So for myself, I try and use the platform that I have now to try and inspire people to make the right decisions and to really focus on the future because, I was focused on the future. Everything I was focusing on was building for the Olympic Games and professional career. And unfortunately, that got short 16 years. So I had to wait almost 20 years to come back to the sport and to pursue my career. And I didn't have the support and the backing, on the second half that I was hoping to or might have had as a young man when I was a top prospect with more Canadian titles
Right.
and all that kind of stuff.
Now, I'm assuming that you used your time while you were away to, train hard so that when you came out, you were ready to jump back into the very sport that you loved, were passionate about. Yeah.
Well, a lot of it was like, I didn't get to boxing train as much as I would have liked to. Let's say over the 20 years I was inside, maybe 4 or 5 years of that time, I would have actually had access to bag gloves and heavy bag. Couldn't really get to spar and stuff like that inside. Obviously, that type of stuff was not permitted. So it was really about having to weight train. I'd play a lot of basketball, get the bag when I could. Didn't do a lot of shadow boxing. Just played a lot of hockey and just really stayed active and just stayed positive and just kept telling myself, I am going to be out here pursuing my boxing career one day and I am going to win titles. And, everything that I had manifested over the 20 years that I was inside, I've been continuing to make good and continuing to use that as motivation to keep reaching for the stars.
That's excellent. And I mean, that's got to be hard knowing too that during that time, others were advancing in the sport at a younger age and you had to come out and compete against those younger people without having had trained every single day. So you kind of got to jump right back into it, right? Now, what did that journey look like when you got out and started having to compete again?
Good question. I got out and I had, a number of credentials to I had 4 Canadian titles in a row, 2 heavyweight, 2 super heavyweight, 5 provincial titles over in European championships. I got bronze in 95. And then I took 20 years off. And when I got out, nobody cared that I had all that stuff. They said, how old are you? I was like, well, I'm 36. Said, oh, okay. And how long ago did you box? I said, well, 20 years. Okay. Go back and do something, right? So that's when I realized that like boxing really the old adage is true. You're only as good as your last fight, and nobody cares what you did last year. It's what you're doing here and now today. So that was the motivation for me to figure it out and realize that I was going to have to learn on the job. And, I had a poor start in my pro career, obviously starting out 0-4. And when everybody gave up on me, that was pretty much when pressure was off. And I just said, guys, I'm going to coach and train myself. And when I'm 10 fights in, I'm going to be 6-4. And 10 fights in, I was 6-4, and I wasn't expecting to have 2 professional titles as well. The unified student Western Canadian title. It just showed me, okay, like, what, I can do this. And I've inspired a few guys that are over as well to get back into the gym and to focus on their health and fitness. So for me, it really feels good to be doing something.
Right. I just want to touch briefly on what the journey of, believing in yourself is the strongest gift you can give yourself and obviously the biggest motivator. So I think that's fantastic too, as part of your story that, it didn't matter who was judging you by your age or judging you by the fact that you hadn't been in the ring in a while. You proved to them that you were capable. And I just want to address the fact that you are 8-0. Is that not correct?
I'm 8-0, coaching and training myself with 4 pro titles.
And that's a really impressive record, especially with the roadblock of age. And I can only assume, even though you're not letting it be a deterrent, I'm sure in fighting sponsors, promoters, or anything, that age is a factor.
It is. I think in boxing, the people that are involved in the administrative side, a lot of them have been around for a long time. When you really feel like you know something, it's really hard to move somebody off that opinion. It doesn't matter who you are and what you do. Say, the older guys in the game, they've seen fighters decline. They look at a guy that's 44 now, they say, okay, too old. And they want to just close the door on. But the thing is that I haven't even hit my ceiling. I haven't even started the declines. The one that actually does have the forecasting and the ability to see what I have is really going to benefit from that in the future, because I'm one of those guys that never forgets the ones that looked after me and did a random act of kindness along the way. And I never forget those that are wicked to us.
So, as everyone should behave in life. I'm just curious now too, if you could talk to me about, I was lucky enough to be at your last 2 fights and they were fantastic, by the way. And I would have put money on if there was a betting option at that time because it was an easy bet. And I thought you just looked fantastic. So for me, as an outside fan and someone who just loves to watch people rise in sports and in combat sports specifically. Um, you know, I want to talk about the promotion and the sponsorship and what it's like right now for you to try, even though you're 8-0, and even though it's undeniable that when you step in that ring, you're probably going to win.